In August 2001, a construction worker named Terry Fleming was excavating land along a quiet stretch of Highway 18 near Morganton, North Carolina, when his shovel struck something that wasn't rock and wasn't root. Buried just beneath the red clay surface was a child's backpack, and someone had wrapped it in not one but two black plastic garbage bags. Sealed tight against moisture, sealed tight against decay, as if whoever placed it there didn't want the elements to destroy what was inside. They wanted it preserved. And when investigators finally opened that bag, what they found didn't answer a single question about the little girl it belonged to. It created dozens more. Because that backpack belonged to a 9-year-old girl named Asha Degree. A girl who had vanished from her home 18 months earlier in the dead of night during one of the worst February storms Shelby, North Carolina, had seen in years. And here's the detail that will follow you long after this video ends. Asha Degree was terrified of the dark. She was afraid of thunderstorms, afraid of dogs, afraid of walking to the bathroom at night without the hallway light on. Her mother described her as a child who clung to routine and safety, who needed the comfort of knowing exactly where she was at all times. And yet, in the early morning hours of February 14th, 2000, Valentine's Day, this same child packed a bag, laced up her white sneakers, and walked out of her family's home into a torrential downpour. Alone, at 3 o'clock in the morning, no one forced her out. No windows were broken. No doors were kicked in. She simply left. And the question that has haunted investigators for a quarter of a century isn't just where Asha Degree went. It's what on earth could have made a child who feared the dark walk straight into it. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand the Degree family, because nothing about Asha's home life predicts what she did.
I tell him every day how much I love him,
just attentive parents,
and that I will always protect him.
They were deliberate about protection. They didn't own a computer because they feared online predators gaining access to their children. Asha and her brother O'Brien were only allowed to watch approved television programs. When they played outside, they couldn't wander past a certain distance from the front door. Asha knew the rules by heart. Don't talk to strangers. Don't open the door for anyone, not even family, unless a parent was home. She was quiet, focused, responsible beyond her years. She was a 4th grader at Falston Elementary, regularly chosen as Student of the Week. Her favorite subjects were math and science. She already knew she wanted to attend Winston-Salem University to study science when she grew up. She dreamed of becoming a writer and an illustrator. This was not a reckless child. This was not a child who broke rules or tested boundaries. And that's precisely what makes what happened next feel less like a runaway story and more like something engineered by someone else entirely. The weekend had been unremarkable. School was closed that Friday, February 11th. So Asha and O'Brien spent the day at their aunt's house while their parents worked. That afternoon, both children had basketball games at Falston Elementary. Asha's team played first, and they lost. It was their first defeat of the season, and Asha, their star player, had fouled out during the game. Witnesses said she was visibly upset afterward, even crying in the bleachers. But by the time her brother's game tipped off, she had bounced back.
Go team,
She
go!
was cheering from the stands, her mood lifted. On Sunday the 13th, the family attended church. Picked Asha up from her cousin's house where she'd been staying since Friday, had lunch with relatives, and drove home. It was an ordinary weekend in every observable way. And if you're wondering whether that basketball loss somehow pushed a 9-year-old to walk out of her house to nights later at 3 in the morning in a rainstorm, investigators spent years examining that theory. The answer they kept returning to was the same. No, a basketball game does not explain this. Nothing in her life explains this. And that absence of motive is what makes this case so deeply unsettling. Because when a child leaves voluntarily and there's no reason to leave, then the reason wasn't inside the house. It was outside, and it was waiting. That Sunday night, the storm arrived. Asha had been tired from the weekend at her cousin's house and napped around 6:30 p.m. The rolling thunder jolted her awake at about 8:30, and she padded into the den where Aquila and O'Brien were watching television. Harold was at his second job. Late-night shifts were routine, nothing unusual. By 9 o'clock, the storm had intensified. A car accident nearby brought down a utility pole, and the power cut out across the neighborhood. Aquila lit candles and started the kerosene heater.
Come in, honey.
Her sister
You made
and her
it.
sister's children came over from across
I'm
the
so
street
glad
to
we're
ride
here.
out the
Thank
blackout
you.
together. At 9:30, Aquila told both children to go to bed. Asha and O'Brien went to their shared bedroom, to twin beds in a small room, and that should have been the last unremarkable detail of an unremarkable Sunday. Harold got home from work at approximately 12:30 a.m. Power was back on by then. He watched television alone for about 2 hours, decompressing from his shift. And before going to bed around 30 a.m., he stepped into his children's room to check on them. Both Asha and O'Brien were sound asleep. He closed the door. And somewhere in the silence between that moment to 30 in the morning and 5:45 a.m., when Aquila entered the room to wake the children for school, Asha Degree got out of bed, changed out of her pajamas, put on her jeans and white sneakers, grabbed the backpack she had apparently packed in advance, loaded with changes of clothes, her basketball uniform, family photographs, and her house key, and she walked out of the house and into the storm without a sound, without waking anyone. Except that isn't entirely true, because her brother O'Brien later told investigators something small but devastating. I heard her bed squeak. I just thought she was rolling over. I didn't think anything of it. He fell back asleep. And when his mother came in 3 hours later, there was only one child in the room. Now the case enters the territory that makes it impossible to look away. And if you've watched our investigation into the isolation that consumed the Dialogue Pass hikers, you already know that geography doesn't just frame a mystery. Sometimes it becomes the mystery. Highway 18 at 4 o'clock in the morning is not a road, it's an absence. It's a narrow lane slicing through a corridor of dense Carolina pine and hardwood. No streetlights, no guardrails, no houses visible from the shoulder. Clear night, you see stars in the night. On a night like February 14th, 2000, with rain hammering the asphalt in sheets and temperatures sinking toward 40 degrees, visibility collapsed to whatever your headlights could reach, and then nothing. Absolutely nothing. The kind of darkness that swallows sound. The kind of darkness Asha Degree had been afraid of her entire life. And she was out there, walking in it, at 9 years old, in a white t-shirt and white pants, completely alone. Sometime around 4 in the morning, a truck driver heading south on Highway 18 saw something that made no sense. A small figure on the road shoulder, a child, wearing all white, a long t-shirt, white pants, white sneakers, her hair done up in pigtails. She carried a backpack and walked at a fast, steady pace, head down, as if she had somewhere specific to be. He was troubled enough to loop his rig around. He came back, but when he pulled closer, she didn't look up. I seen a little girl walking with her book bag. She had on a little white dress, white tennis shoes, and her hair was in pigtails. I went back, but she never looked up at me. She looked like she knew where she was going. She was walking at a pretty fast pace. A second driver passed the same stretch of highway 18 minutes later. He noticed the figure too, but assumed it was a small woman, possibly caught up in a domestic situation. He didn't stop. He didn't call anyone. Neither driver contacted police until hours later, after Usher's face appeared on the local morning news. And this is where the case fractures into something darker. Because when the first driver circled back a final time and his headlights swept across her again, closer now, Asha didn't call out for help. She didn't freeze. She didn't wave him down. She ran. She bolted off the shoulder and disappeared into the dense tree line flanking the highway, into the soaking wet, pitch-black woods. Think about that. A child who was afraid of dogs. A child who wouldn't cross a dark hallway without a light on. And she chose the forest at night over the safety of a human being trying to help her. Either Asha Degree was running from everyone, or she had been told to trust no one except the person she was on her way to meet. And that distinction is what separates a runaway from a victim. Equal a Degree discovered her daughter's bed empty at 5:45 that morning.
Oh,
Police
God,
were
no.
at the house by
Where is he?
6:40.
He's not here.
What followed was the largest search in Cleveland County history. Officers, volunteers, neighbors, church members fanning out through fields, forests, and abandoned structures. But the storm had erased the landscape. Search dogs were brought in, and here's a detail that most accounts get wrong. Rain does not wash away scent. Moisture actually helps carry scent particles. Bloodhounds track better in damp conditions, not worse. And yet the dogs found nothing. They could not pick up Usher's trail anywhere along Highway 18 or the surrounding woods, which tells investigators something specific. Either she was never on foot in those areas for as long as they assumed, or at some point, she stopped walking and got into a vehicle. And when a ground trail ends that cleanly, it usually means the latter. Three days after the disappearance, a family living near Highway 18 checked their shed, a small outbuilding used by Turner Upholstery, and found items on the floor that didn't belong there. Valentine's Day candy wrappers, a pencil, a pen, and a small hairbow shaped like Mickey Mouse. Usha's parents confirmed every item was hers. The candy matched what she had received at school days earlier. She had been inside that shed. Probably cold, probably soaked, probably terrified, huddled alone in the dark, the one thing she feared most, waiting. But waiting for what? For the courage to go home? Or for someone to come and get her? Because after that shed, Asha Degree vanishes. No more sightings, no more belongings scattered along a path. Nothing for 18 months. And then came the discovery that redefined everything. August 2001, 18 months of dead ends, false leads, and a family that never stopped. Shovel hit the backpack at a construction site 26 miles north of Shelby. 26 miles from the Degree family home. 26 miles that a 9-year-old girl could never have walked alone. Not in a storm, not in daylight, not under any circumstances. And the backpack had been buried deliberately, wrapped into black garbage bags, sealed against rain and rot. Someone had taken the time, the care. And that single forensic detail is what shifts this entire case from a tragic disappearance into something calculated, as we saw in the MH370 investigation, where the physical evidence flatly contradicted every comfortable explanation. This backpack should not exist in the condition it was found. If a child runs away and meets an accidental end, her belongings scatter. They degrade, they're abandoned. But this backpack was entombed, preserved. Hidden along a route that required a vehicle to reach. Someone drove Usha's belongings, or drove Usha 26 miles along that highway and made a conscious, deliberate decision to bury the evidence in a manner that prevented its destruction. That is not grief, that is not panic, that is method. That is planning. When the FBI finally disclosed the full contents of that backpack, information withheld from the public for nearly 2 decades, the inventory was devastating. Several changes of clothing, her basketball uniform, her favorite pair of pants, her house key, her wallet, 3 family photographs. These are the belongings of a child who packed for a journey, not a child running in panic. But it was 2 items that did not belong to Asha that shattered every existing theory. The first was a New Kids on the Block nightshirt, a concert-style shirt her family had never seen before. It was not hers. The second was a doctor. Seuss book, a library book checked out from a school that was not Falston Elementary. A book from a different school, a different library. Placed among a 9-year-old's most personal possessions by someone whose identity has never been established. Now stop and think about what that means. If those items were already in the bag when Usha left home, then someone had contact with her, private. Hidden contact that her watchful parents never detected and gave her personal belongings she kept secret. If those items were placed in the bag after she disappeared, then someone had possession of both Usha and her backpack, mingled their own belongings with hers, and then buried the evidence 26 miles away, wrapped in plastic with the precision of someone who understood concealment. Either way, the conclusion is the same. Asha Degree did not disappear alone. Someone was involved, someone she may have known, someone she may have trusted, and that someone has never been named. For 15 years, the case stalled. Tips came in by the hundreds, none led to Asha, and then, in 2015, the FBI released a piece of information they had held back. A witness had come forward claiming to have seen Usha getting into a vehicle on Highway 18 that night. A dark green 1970s Lincoln Continental Mark IV. If that account is accurate, it resolves the impossible mechanics of the case. How a 9-year-old vanished from an open highway without leaving a footprint beyond the shed. She didn't walk into the void. She climbed into a car. And in 2024, law enforcement executed a search warrant on a property connected to a long-standing suspect in Usha's case. They seized a vehicle matching the description of that Lincoln Continental. The FBI has not publicly named a suspect. No charges have been filed. But for the first time in 24 years, the investigation is no longer standing still. As of this recording, Asha Degree has never been found. She would be 35 years old. The reward for information stands at $45,000. Her case remains classified as active by the FBI and the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office. But the absence of answers has never stopped her family from showing up. Every single year, Harold and Aquila Degree return to the stretch of Highway 18 where their daughter was last seen. They walk that road. They hold candles. They are joined by neighbors, friends, members of their church, and the officers who responded to the call on that Valentine's morning over 2 decades ago. There is a sign on Highway 18 now, a permanent marker bearing Usha's photograph. Flowers at its base, a quiet monument in a landscape that offers nothing but pine trees, wet asphalt, and silence. They established a scholarship in Usha's name. They have never moved from their home.
I just got enough faith in God that He would let us know. I don't believe she's dead. I can just keep the hope that she's gonna walk through that door one day.
I just got enough faith in God that He would let us know.
And I just refuse to let anybody take that away from me.
I can just keep the hope that she's gonna walk through that door one day. All we got is hope, and I just refuse to let anybody take that away from me. And that is the wound this case carves. Not just the absence of Asha, but the precision of her disappearance. A child who feared the dark walked into it voluntarily. A backpack was buried and sealed with deliberate care by someone who understood how to conceal evidence. Items belonging to a stranger were found nestled among a 9-year-old's most personal belongings, her family photos, her basketball jersey, her house key, and a dark green car may have been waiting that night at the shoulder of a rain-soaked highway, engine idling in the blackness, headlights off. This was not a runaway. This was not an accident. Every piece of evidence, the pre-packed bag, the timing, the plastic wrapping, the unknown items, the vehicle, points towards something far more calculated than a frightened child wandering off. Someone knew Asha. Someone earned her trust. Someone convinced a girl who was afraid of everything to walk into the one place she feared the most. And that someone is still out there. The question that echoes along Highway 18 25 years later isn't simply what happened to Asha Degree. It's who was waiting for her in the dark. If you have any information about the disappearance of Asha Degree, contact the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office at 704-484-4822 or the FBI's Charlotte Division at 704-672-6100. The call you make could be the one that finally brings her home. And if this case stayed with you, if the emptiness of that highway and the question of who wrapped that backpack in plastic unsettled you as deeply as it unsettled me, share this video. Because Asha's story doesn't end until someone answers the question this road has been asking for 25 years. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next investigation.